The Japanese Whisky Highball is not just a cocktail, it's a way of life in Japan. Today I'm going to show you how to make the perfect one, along with some tips and tricks to make it your own, and my own personal experience with the cocktail. Let's get started. Before we get to making the cocktail, I want to touch on a little bit of a brief history on why the Japanese highball is such a beloved cocktail in Japan. Obviously, the highball wasn't something that was invented in Japan. People have been drinking whiskey and soda water for ages, since really the 19th century. But how did it become a signature drink of Japan, being consumed almost more than beer? After World War II, Japan went into an economic boom. During this post-war era, izakaya culture really took off, along with the highball, as whiskey was really starting to expand and grow in Japan, with pioneers such as Suntory and Nikka. However, whiskey kind of fell out of fashion a little later in the 70s, 80s. It wasn't until the early 2000s when Suntory began the Highball Revival campaign, which pictured the highball as cool again, something light and refreshing to have after work, and something that pairs amazing with food, especially Japanese food that you can find in izakayas. And nowadays it's seen as something quintessentially part of Japanese culture. Something elegant, very minimalist, only two main ingredients, something that perfectly encapsulates Japanese design. It became not just a drink, something that was part of daily life. And you can see it if you go to Japan. Every single izakaya, every single bar. Number one, beer. Number two, whiskey highball. Even in konbinis, you have the beer section, right next to that, the highball section. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about how to actually make the drink. First, here's what you'll need. Obviously, first on the docket is some Japanese whiskey. The Japanese whiskey we're going to use in this video is Daijukai, which is a grain and malt blended whiskey that I was able to find at a very well-known sake brewery next to Kawaguchiko in Japan. Now, as you can see, I've drinking quite a bit of it, but this is actually my go-to whiskey for Japanese highballs for now. You can use any whiskey that you want. That's what's beautiful about the highball, is that it's perfectly customizable. In Japan, most izakayas, whiskey that they would use is something like Suntory or Nikka. For example, Suntory Kaku is kind of a cheaper whiskey that you can find anywhere and mixes great with soda water. Other ones would include the Nikka Black, or even Jim Beam and Maker's Mark, as Suntory did recently buy the Jim Beam distillery, so you can find those kinds of affordable bourbon in Japan to make as highballs as well. But today we're using this one. For me, highballs are something that are a great way to test out a new whiskey. Whenever I try a new whiskey, I always try it straight or on the rocks. And then my second way is to try it in a highball, because you can really get a sense of the flavor of the whiskey. Drinking it straight, you get a lot of that flavor, but it can sometimes be too strong. If you really want to kind of lengthen those flavors out, take your time with it, a highball is a great way to try out a new whiskey and really see if you like it. For example, this whiskey I actually do not prefer to drink it straight. To me, it has a little too much nuttiness and graininess to it that my palate doesn't necessarily like a lot, but in a highball it actually tastes great, something I've never even had before. Being from a sake brewery, a lot of different flavors that you don't really get in a lot of whiskey, but this goes really well in a highball. All that to say, whiskey of your choice. Because it's a Japanese highball, we're going to be using some Japanese whiskey. Next thing you'll need is some soda water. Today we're going to be using Topo Chico. Topo Chico is some of the bubbliest sparkling water that you can find in America. In Japan, we would use Wilkinson, which is a sparkling water that's specifically made to be used in Japanese highballs because of how bubbly it is, and you want this to be as bubbly as possible. So make sure you have some chilled, bubbly, sparkling water. Those are the two main ingredients. However, there is another one that adds a lot to this drink, and that is lemon. You can do it two ways. You can either have a lemon slice and just drop it right in, or you can use the lemon peel to express the lemon oil over the top to give it that lemon essence, a little bit of that flavor, but not too much to where it overpowers the drink. For me, I really love lemons in highballs, so we're actually going to do both. And of course, lastly, you're going to need a glass filled with ice. I actually chilled mine in the freezer. If you have the time, if you want to prep ahead, I recommend that. Or there's a technique that a lot of Japanese bartenders use to make their highball as cold as possible. Okay, you got your glass and you got your ice. I recommend using some clear ice, as clear ice takes a longer time to dilute and it just looks great in the drink. Now what the Japanese do to get the glass even cooler is they actually start stirring with the ice in it. So we're going to stir like this. Give it about 20 to 30 stirs. Let that ice really sink in and get into the glass, and really get the glass nice and cold. This may seem like overkill. However, that's the beauty about the Japanese highball, is that you can simply put some ice in it, some whiskey, some soda water, and call it a day. Or you can go that extra mile and make it the best you can. That's why I'm making this video today. That seems like a good amount of stirring. As you can see, a little bit of water has gotten at the bottom of this, so that's why we're going to strain this off now. All right, now that it's strained off, we're going to add our whiskey. First, we're going to add 1.5 ounces of whiskey. Remember, it can be any whiskey that you want, but if it's a Japanese highball, We're going to be using Japanese whiskey, or like so. And again, we're going to give it another stir, just to get the whiskey nice and cold. As you can see, the ice has gone down a little bit, so we're actually going to add a few more cubes of ice to make sure that it doesn't dilute faster. All right, now we got some more ice in there, and the whiskey is nice and cold here. Now we're going to add our club soda. You see how nice and bubbly that is. What we're going to do here, and this is very important, in order to keep the club soda from just settling on top, we want it to get into that whiskey and create that effervescence and get the whiskey down to the top. So we're going to pour this club soda off the ice like so. About 3 to 5 ounces. Now be careful not to stir it too much. When we stir it, we're going to do 1, 2, and then lift up. And there we go. You see all those bubbles. We don't want all those bubbles to go away. Now, last thing is the garnish. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a spritz of lemon. What we're going to do is we're going to get this lemon side right here, and we're just going to give it a nice twist over the top, like so. And then we're going to rub it around the rim just a little bit. And you can either dump it in, but since I'm going to be putting a lemon wedge in already, I'm just going to toss it out to the side, drop that lemon wedge in like so, and there we go. The quintessential Japanese whiskey highball. Kanpai. That's really good. What I love about it is just so simple, yet it brings out all of the characteristics of the Japanese whiskey, along with just being something very refreshing. And it's something that also makes you almost want to crave food to have as well. That's why it got so popular in izakayas. It's because this pairs amazing with traditional izakaya food like karaage, like edamame, like yakitori, almost on par with beer. You know, for me, the whiskey highball was never really something that I really cared about until I actually started living in Japan. I always thought just whiskey and soda, it's just like, doesn't really do anything for me. However, it wasn't until I had a few and while I really started drinking whiskey till I realized how well this pairing goes together. Just like gin and tonic water, vodka and ginger beer, tequila and lime juice. Something about whiskey and club soda and just a little bit of lemon work together perfectly. It's something you don't have to be a master bartender. It's something you can make at home, and it's something that can be made really easily, almost the same amount of time for beer. And remember, this is the Japanese version of it. You can use any whiskey you want. I'll use highballs with bourbon, scotch, Irish whiskey, basically anything. You could even switch out whiskey. If you're not a big whiskey fan, you can try gin, you can try tequila, rum, anything. That's why the highball is so popular and is something that can be changed in order to fit your specific taste, your specific flavor profile. But for me, nothing's better than just simply whiskey, soda, and a little bit of lemon. It's my go-to cocktail after a long day, or whether I'm just relaxing, and whenever I'm trying out a new whiskey that I want to understand what the flavor profile is. I'll try it on the rocks first, and then I'll try it in a whiskey highball. The highball is something that's light enough to drink casually, but refined enough to appreciate and really call a work of art as a cocktail. So whether you're living in Tokyo or whether you're living in Texas, the whiskey highball is just a few ingredients away. So I encourage you to try to make it on your own. If you want any more cocktail recipes or tips, let me know in the comments what you want me to talk about next. I know in a previous video I made a lot of izakaya drinks. Some didn't turn out so well, unfortunately. So I may pick a few of those in the future and go in depth and really perfect the recipes and make them better. And if you've been watching this channel and you're wondering, when are you going to make a Jags video? Stay tuned, I got something coming up in the future very soon. With all that being said, thanks for watching. See you later.